Okay, so you know how sometimes there's this idea that when a big Disney movie gets made, it's all like happily ever after behind the scenes.
Yeah, totally.
But we are going to look at a film that kind of flipped the script on that fairy tale.
It did.
This is the live-action remake of Snow White, and it sounds like it was anything but a smooth journey to the screen. There's a lot to unpack with this one.
There really is. A lot of drama, a lot of controversy, and honestly, the box office numbers were, well, not quite what Disney was probably hoping for.
Yeah, disenchanting might be one way to put it.
Maybe.
But hey, that's what we're here for, right? To dig into the nitty-gritty of all this. So get this deep dive started. We've got some really fascinating sources.
Yeah, we do.
We've got this Variety article, Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco, Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a social media guru for Rachel Zegler.
Right. Came out just a few days ago on March 25th, 2025.
So it's got all the latest scoop. And then on top of that, we're also going to be looking at some YouTube videos that are giving their take on the whole situation.
Lots of different perspectives out there.
We've got Drunk 3PO with their video, Disney Insiders Exposes Rachel Zegler Nightmare Why Snow White Failed.
Catchy title.
Very dramatic.
Yes.
Then we got Jester Bell with Rachel Zegler is a horrible person behind the scenes. Story revealed.
Okay, getting a little spicy with that one.
Just a tad. Then to round things off, we've got Clownfish TV, and their video is called Snow White Behind the Scenes Fiasco. Disney tried to shut up Big Seller.
Lots of exclamation points in those titles.
They're not holding back.
They are not.
But you know, that's what makes this so interesting, right? You've got all these different voices and opinions swirling around this one movie.
Yeah, and we want to give you the full picture, right? Not just one side of the story.
Exactly. So let's get into it. Okay, so rewind back to August 12th, 2024. Disney's big D23 event is happening, and the very first trailer for Snow White drops.
Big moment.
Huge moment. And the response is, well, pretty much what you'd expect from a Disney movie. The trailer gets a whopping 120 million views in just 24 hours.
That's the kind of hype that studios dream of. I mean, that's incredible engagement right off the bat.
Yeah, you would think things would be smooth sailing from there on out, right?
You would think, but this is where it gets interesting. Buckle up, because right after that trailer drops, Rachel Zegler, who plays Snow White, she posts something on formerly Twitter.
Here we go.
And it's simple, but man, it made waves. Her post just said, and always remember, free Palestine.
And that one little post got how many views?
8.8 million.
More than the initial trailer.
Yeah, a lot more.
Yeah.
And it really set off alarm bells at Disney. You know, they've got this $270 million movie, tentpole project, as they call it.
Massive investment.
Yeah. And suddenly the star is kind of injecting this politically charged message into the conversation.
Not exactly on brand for the Mouse House, right?
Not really. And if you look at the Variety article, they talk about how this really caused shock within the studio. Like, they weren't prepared for this at all.
It's a tough spot for them to be in, right? Because on one hand, they've got this huge financial stake in the film. But on the other hand, they're this global brand that wants to appeal to everyone.
It's a balancing act. And then there's the whole Gina Carano situation looming in the background. Remember, she was let go from The Mandalorian over her social media posts.
Yeah, so you can see why Disney might be a little bit jumpy about this.
Oh, absolutely. This was a big flashing warning sign for them.
So what did they do? I mean, did they just let it slide?
No, they definitely didn't ignore it. The Drunk 3PO video claims that the film's producer, Mark Platt, actually flew all the way to New York to have a conversation with Zegler about the tweet.
Wow.
Yeah. And according to them, Platt was pretty straightforward. He apparently said something along the lines of, please delete the tweet. You should not have put that underneath the teaser trailer.
It makes sense. I mean, from his perspective, it's kind of like trying to contain a potential PR disaster before it blows up.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Zegler, she refused to delete it. Yeah, so that really highlights the whole tension that can exist between studios and their actors, especially in today's social media landscape.
Yeah.
You know, actors have these huge platforms, and they're not afraid to use them to voice their opinions, even if it goes against what the studio might want.
Right. And this wasn't even the first time Zegler had butted heads with Disney.
Oh, yeah. Remember during the West Side Story Awards campaign back in 2022?
Oh, yeah.
That was a whole other thing.
So fill everyone in on that. What happened?
Well, Zegler, she was starring in West Side Story, right?
Okay.
And the film was nominated for Best Picturette.
Huge deal.
Huge. But Zegler hadn't received a personal invitation to the ceremony.
Oof.
Yeah. And she was not happy about it. She took to social media to kind of vent her frustrations and, you know, publicly express her disappointment.
So basically called out the Academy?
Pretty much. And at that time, she'd already started filming Snow White in London. Disney initially wasn't going to release her from production to attend the Oscars.
Oh.
Yeah. But after all the public outcry and, you know, the pressure from Zegler speaking out, the Academy ended up giving her a ticket.
Okay, so this wasn't just a one-off thing with the Free Palestine post. This seems like there might be a pattern here.
It does seem that way, right? Like, Zegler is definitely not shy about voicing her opinions, even if it rubs some people the wrong way. And the Jester Bell video, they actually bring up a really interesting point about this. They say that this West Side Story incident could be seen as kind of an early indicator of Zegler's more independent approach to her public image.
Like she's willing to push back against the studio system.
Exactly.
Interesting. So back to the Snow White situation and the Free Palestine post. Did anything actually come from that besides the producer flying out to talk to her?
Oh, yeah. There are some pretty serious consequences. Remember, Gal Gadot is Israeli.
Right. And she plays the evil queen in the film.
Well, according to the Variety article after Zegler's post, the number of death threats aimed at Gal Gadot skyrocketed.
Oh, wow. That's terrifying.
It is. And it really highlights the dark side of online discourse. Like, these are real-world consequences stemming from a social media post.
Absolutely.
Disney had to actually step in and provide Gado with extra security. She's a mother of four, so this was no joke for her.
Right. So that original post about Free Palestine, it wasn't just some abstract online debate. It had real-world implications for Gadot's safety.
Yeah, and both Variety and the Drunk 3PO video, they quote an insider who basically says that Zegler, quote, didn't understand the repercussions of her actions as far as what that meant for the film, for Gal, for anyone.
So there was a disconnect there between what she said online and the impact it had.
Yeah, a pretty big one, it seems.
But it didn't stop there, did it?
Unfortunately, no. Fast forward a few months to after the presidential election, and Zegler reportedly posts some pretty harsh stuff about Donald Trump on Instagram.
Like what?
Well, Variety says she used phrases like, fuck Donald Trump, and may Trump supporters never know peace.
Strong words.
Yeah. And according to Variety, at that point, Disney had pretty much had enough.
I can imagine. It's one thing to express your political views, but when you start using that kind of language, it's a whole other level, especially when you're the face of a major Disney film.
Right. And it's not just about offending people. It's also about the financial risk. Like we said, this is a $270 million movie, and they've already had issues with costly reshoots. So to have their star potentially alienating a big chunk of their audience.
Yeah, that's not a good look for the studio.
Not at all. So according to Variety, Mark Platt stepped in again. He basically had to have another conversation with Zegler about her social media use.
Round two.
Exactly. And this time it seems like something actually changed, because Variety says that she started working with the social media consultant who was being paid by Disney.
So Disney was basically trying to control what she posted.
In a way, yes. The consultant's job was to vet her posts before she put them out there, make sure nothing controversial slipped through. And Drunk 3PO actually points out that this might explain why Zegler's Twitter activity seemed to die down in the months leading up to the film's release.
So damage control mode activated.
Exactly.
But the question is, did all this damage control actually work?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to answer that, we have to look at how the film actually performed.
Right, because at the end of the day, box office numbers speak volumes. So how did Snow White do?
Not great. The opening weekend was pretty dismal, according to Variety. They reported a worldwide gross of just $87 million.
Ouch.
Yeah, for a film of this scale, that's way below expectations, especially when you compare it to something like Joker, Fully Ado, which made about $34 million more on a smaller budget.
So for a film with this much hype and this much money poured into it, that's got to sting a bit.
Oh, absolutely. And Variety quotes an executive at a rival studio who basically says, you can't say that a live-action remake of the most iconic film in the vault that cost $270 million and has been reshot multiple times, opening to $50 million, is okay. The math does not work. That movie should be a billion-dollar movie.
So they're saying it was a flop.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And to really drive that point home, its domestic opening was even lower than what they were initially projecting.
How much lower?
It landed at $43 million versus an expected $45 to $55 million.
It's not even close to hitting their targets.
Not even close. And for a movie that cost $270 million to make, plus all the marketing costs, that's a huge problem. Like, they need to make $1 billion just to break even.
So this wasn't just a minor misstep. This was a major financial disappointment for Disney.
Yeah, it was. And, you know, when you look at the industry analysis, most people point to all the negative buzz surrounding the film as a major contributing factor to its poor performance.
Like all the social media stuff we've been talking about.
Exactly. Variety quotes Jeff Bach from Exhibitor Relations, and he says, too much negative controversy surrounded this film for years, and it didn't help that the reviews were subpar, likely rendering this latest live-action adventure to D+ for many potential ticket buyers.
So basically people were turned off by all the drama, and they weren't even that impressed with the film itself.
It seems that way. And Bach also mentions that it might have a longer run because there aren't that many other big releases coming out, but still that initial opening weekend is a big red flag.
Yeah, it shows that something wasn't working.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about the social media controversies, the box office flop, but there's also this whole other layer to the story, right?
There is.
The behind-the-scenes stuff with the cast, specifically the relationship between Zegler and Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
Like what was actually going on there?
Yeah, because there were all these rumors about a feud between them, but Variety actually spoke to sources who say that there wasn't any bad blood between them during filming. Apparently, they got along just fine on set.
So no catfights or anything?
Not according to these sources. However, Variety also reports that things did get a little awkward leading up to the film's release. They point to this one Instagram reply where Zegler refers to Gado as a professional pageant queen after they both appeared at the...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not exactly a glowing endorsement of her co-star. And that comment was pretty widely seen as a bit of a dig at Gado.
Yeah, I can see how that would create some tension.
Right. And it seems like Disney might have been trying to manage that tension because Variety notes that they often scheduled the two actresses for separate promotional events. Like they didn't want them to be in the same room together.
Wow, so they were really trying to keep them apart.
Yeah, and it even went as far as the premiere. Variety says that they were kept separate there too, and that there were very limited red carpet appearances with no traditional sit-down interview.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Zegler was actually seated 2 rows ahead of Gadot at the premiere itself.
Oh, wow. They really were trying to keep their distance.
It seems that way. And then Drunk 3PO adds another layer to this. They talk about reports that Zegler was excluding Gado from her social media posts that featured other members of the cast and crew.
So fueling the rumors of a feud.
Yeah, even if they weren't actually fighting on set, it seems like there might have been some underlying tension there.
So all in all, not a very harmonious working relationship.
Not exactly. But to be fair to the film, Variety does point out that there were a lot of other challenges during production that were completely unrelated to the social media stuff or the alleged feud between the stars.
Like what?
Well, there were the significant COVID-related delays that every film was dealing with at the time. And then on top of that, there was an actual fire on set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the actors' strike happened, which impacted their ability to do reshoots.
So a lot of bad luck on top of everything else.
It seems that way.
And it's not like Snow White was an isolated incident, right? Disney has been having a bit of a bumpy ride with their live-action remakes lately.
Yeah, both Variety and the Drunk 3PO video, they touch on this. Like, Dumbo didn't exactly set the world on fire.
Right.
Maleficent, Mistress of Evil did okay, but it wasn't a massive hit. And then Peter Pan and Wendy, that went straight to Disney Plus.
So not exactly a stellar track record.
Not really, which suggests that maybe there's a bigger issue here than just the controversies surrounding Snow White. Like maybe audiences are starting to get a little bit tired of these live action remakes.
Yeah, it's like how many times can you retell the same story?
Right.
So given everything that happened with Snow White, what do you think this means for the future?
Well, that's a good question. The Drunk 3PO video actually makes a pretty bold prediction. They say that Rachel Zegler might not work with Disney again.
Wow.
Yeah. They think that her career might be more focused on Broadway from now on.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they also expressed some concern about the financial implications for Disney. Like, this was a big budget film that flopped. So what does that mean for their bottom line? And what does it mean for the industry as a whole if these big tentpole movies aren't making money anymore?
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It is. And then Clownfish TV, they bring up a really interesting point. They think that we might start seeing Disney and other studios putting stricter social media clauses into their contracts with actors, especially younger ones.
So basically trying to prevent this kind of situation from happening again.
Exactly. Like if they can control what their actors are saying online, then maybe they can avoid PR nightmares.
It makes sense from a business perspective, but it's also kind of worrying, right? Like, are we going to get to a point where actors aren't allowed to express their opinions at all?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And Clownfish TV, they also address the argument that Snow White failed solely because of all the political controversy. They bring in some box office analysts who basically say that while all the negative attention definitely didn't help, the movie itself just...
Like it wasn't a very compelling film regardless of the drama.
Right. And they even say that even without all the controversies, it probably wouldn't have been a massive $100 million opening weekend kind of movie.
So maybe it was just a bad film?
Maybe.
Or maybe it was a combination of factors, right?
Right. The controversies, the quality of the film, the changing tastes of audiences, it's all kind of tangled up together.
Yeah, never just one thing.
It rarely is. But it's worth remembering that even though the box office numbers were disappointing, Disney can still make money off of Snow White in the long run.
Right. They've got DVD and digital sales, streaming on Disney Plus, and all the merchandise.
Exactly. So they might be able to recoup some of their losses that way. But still, that initial theatrical release is a huge indicator of success. And in this case, it was a pretty big failure.
Okay, so to sum all of this up, it seems like the Snow White production was a bit of a mess. You've got the social media controversies, the production delays, the alleged feud between the stars, and a disappointing box office performance.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder that sometimes these big budget movies aren't as magical as they seem. Like, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know.
Right, and it also raises some interesting questions about the role of social media in Hollywood. Like, how much control should studios have over their actors' online presence? And how do you balance creative freedom with the need to protect your brand?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue with no easy answer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we're going to be grappling with for a while.
I think you're right.
So that's our deep dive into the Snow White fiasco. It's a story about social media and politics and Hollywood. And at the end of the day, it's a reminder that even fairy tales can have a dark side.
They can. But now we want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Did Rachel Zegler go too far with her social media posts? Should Disney have done more to control her? And what does this mean for the future of Hollywood? Leave us a comment below and let's keep the conversation going.
We want to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye. Bye.